A local psychiatrist is warning about the psychological cost of isolating and separating communities and people from their normal day-to-day interaction. Consultant psychiatrist Dr. Jeffrey Walcott says it is critical for measures to be put in place for persons to deal with the effects of anxiety and depression. Shamela Pullen reports.
Several persons have now been placed in quarantine and isolation across the island, including entire communities. This means that their access to people is restricted as a precautionary measure to contain the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. As such, consultant psychiatrist Dr. Jeffrey Walcott says if they're not careful, it can lead to psychological effects.
We saw in one instance where one of the persons in quarantine actually escaped. And that can happen because one of the enemies of isolation is boredom and certainly anxiety and mental depression. So we have to put things in place to help persons who are having to be isolated, having to be in quarantine, to mitigate those dangerous psychological pitfalls that can occur.
Dr. Walcott says some of the things recommended for persons in these situations is to develop a regime to protect their mental health.
Mark the hours. Divide up the days in 2-hour slots and have specific activities for those hours. You have to stay physically active as much as possible, given the length or extent of your illness. But if you can do minimal exercise, if you can be active, you have to socialize, not in the direct sense now, which is dangerous, but you can use the technology in this respect. In other words, you can video call, video chat, or you can be on social media and interact with large groups while in isolation or in a separated environment.
The psychiatrist also said that in the long run, this is what is likely to happen.
We have to be mindful that the population is going to end up in isolation in large quantities eventually. The technique that the public health approach has been using is flattening the curve, not eliminating it. In other words, they are slowing the spread, but it will spread. And you are going to have large numbers, and it's going to maximize at some point in time, where you have a considerable amount of persons who are going to be in isolation or quarantine, and we have to give them the tools for them to make it tolerable and to make it as easy a transition as possible.
Shamela Pullen, TVJ News.